Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Afri Talk podcast, where we come together as a community to discuss, learn from one another, and share our experiences as Africans in the diaspora. And my name is Jackie. Thank you for watching my previous video or listening to my podcast. If you've not had the chance, I'll put a link in the description box so you can go and watch or listen. So, on this week, I'm going to talk to one of my good friends, Gladys. Well, excuse me, Dr. Gladys, because she's officially a
Stop it.
doctor now. Anyways, Dr. Gladys, sorry, please.
You can
Now I
still
think
call
now
me Gladys. Nothing has changed aside
now when
from
I'm
this
talking
title.
now when I'm talking to you, I'll be saying please, please, please. PhD.
I'm still the same. Still the same.
I
But
remember
of course, I appreciate you giving credit and acknowledging my title. But I'm still Gladys.
I remember
Dr.
when
Gladys, not necessary.
it is Dr. Gladys. Because I remember when we went for the how it was a graduation or honoration. What's the good English word?
What you mean?
Is it
Oh, my graduation
honoration? Is
ceremony. It was
graduation?
public defense. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's called a public defense, but it's actually like also a graduation ceremony. But first, you
Uh-huh.
need to defend your thesis, so you have to present your research, and after that, they say, "Okay, now you're officially graduated." That's
Uh-huh.
how it went.
When I went there, when I was like, I was just telling myself, this is what my father would have liked me to. Because my father was always the one saying, hey, he didn't finish, go to university. He want at least one of his children to go to university and this and that. And also I was sitting, I was like, if I was the one standing there on the podium, the way my father would be rolling on the floor. In fact, he would just lie on the floor and say, Jackie, just walk over me, walk on me. In fact, stamp on me. I'm proud of you,
Wow.
Sha. You
Okay.
did well. You did well. At
You're
least,
like a proud parent, literally.
we
Yeah,
thank God
thanks
for
for all
you.
the
I'm very happy
compliments.
for
Yeah.
you. How was it for you to
Yeah.
graduate?
So let's start from the beginning. So I
Mm,
first did my high school
mm,
in Utrecht. That's where I was born and raised. So after 6 years of high school, I decided to study at the University of Amsterdam. I did my bachelor's in anthropology. So I
mm,
studied there for 4 years. And after those 4 years, I decided to do my master's. So I wanted to continue my studies. I didn't want to stay in the Netherlands. So I actually decided to move to London, and I did my master's there for 1 year. And I did my master's in migration and diaspora studies. So after I completed my master's, I was like, okay, what's next? And actually, to be honest, I didn't really know what a PhD was. Had never even imagined me doing a PhD, but it was that when I was doing my master's, there was one a teacher of mine. She was doing a PhD at the time. So seeing someone who I could identify with. She was like a Black Caribbean woman, but she was also like, well, we weren't of the same age, but she was just only a few years older than me. So I could really identify with her. And we became, well, I wouldn't say friends, but someone I really looked up to. And she really shared some of her lessons, like her experiences doing this PhD with me. And this actually made me consider, okay, a PhD, maybe this is something for me. So when I went back to the Netherlands, I was just looking for a job because I wasn't sure like what my next step would be, as I mentioned before. And then I saw this PhD position that was advertised on the Maastricht University website. So Maastricht University, that's the university where I did my PhD at. And all the topic of the PhD really resonated with me because I was interested in migration, mobility, African diaspora, young people, transnationalism, identity, culture, like all those things, all these topics, they came together in this one PhD project, basically. So yeah, I was like, shall I just try and see how far I will get? And then, I submitted my my cover letter, my CV, and long story short, I got invited to do the interview, and I ended up getting the PhD position. So that's basically how it went.
So wait, so for the PhD, it's not like school that you're going to apply to studies. It's a job or what?
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, the PhD is basically like a job.
Mm.
So it's you get hired by the university to do research. So you also get paid in those
Ooh,
4 years.
la
So it's a
la.
4 year program, and yeah, I would say that maybe compared to other countries like the United States, I think your position in the Netherlands is much better because of the fact that you actually get paid. You don't even have to apply for funding necessarily to do your PhD. Oftentimes you rely on funding, and you sometimes even need to pay a fee in order to do your research. So like you need, as for example, when you study, you have to pay college fee, right? And so as a PhD in think in the UK, you have to actually pay fee in order to do the PhD, but it's not like that in the Netherlands. So yeah, that's yeah, that was also for me the reason why I wanted to do it in the Netherlands instead of the UK, for example.
Hey, because of money.
No, not because of, I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I don't want to do extra, get more depth because, when you study, you already get depth. And I don't want to get even more depth because of this PhD thing. Plus, after having done your master's, that already, it can be quite heavy, to do another study program. So if I would have liked to, do this PhD as another study, then, it would have felt even more even heavier. So I was like, nah, I'm gonna pay for it. No, I'm not gonna do it. But yeah, it might seem like, okay, money is also important.
Okay. If it wasn't that you met that teacher in when you went to do your masters in UK, you wouldn't have even thought about PhD. You would just go and apply for a job and just work normal.
That's an interesting question. Well, it's not like she was the only person I knew who had done a PhD. I already had like a sister of a good friend of mine, Seren is her name. She was also doing a PhD when I got to know her. So I was already a little bit familiar with the idea of doing a PhD, but it never crossed my mind that it could be something that I could do myself. So I think it was only when I really met this person in London that I was like, okay, now that I've done my bachelor's, I'm now doing this master's, and I really like to study. That's something I really notice. I'm very passionate about these topics. I can actually follow up on this. This doesn't have to be the end. No, because I was also like, oh, I really like to continue studying. Although it's heavy, I like to do it. So yeah.
Hearing this, the African in me, right? The African in me is all I'm hearing is women who like to study. You cannot marry them because they will the whole day in the house they'll be just reading book. Instead of cooking, they'll be reading book. Instead of taking care of the children, they'll be reading book. Even you, the husband, that you're supposed to be the head of the family, they will be telling you what to do out of the book that they are reading. What do you think about that statement?
I think it's as a PhD student or as someone who likes to study, it's not like it's one thing or the other. You can combine doing household tasks with also with your schoolwork, with your homework. And you know me. Do you think that I'm someone who neglects every other thing that's going on in my life just because I'm only focusing on studying? Like, what do you think?
Well, for me personally, obviously, because I know you're not that type of person, but like it's
Yeah.
I'm talking more from the African, whatever side, because I remember growing up, some women that I know, or like generally in the community, when a woman is going to school and they're doing university, I mean, of course, people are proud. They're like, hey, this girl is really trying, hey, she's going to school. But then all of a sudden, then you start hearing, in Chido, says to school now, and yes, I only know and what it's like, reduce the schooling, else you will not get husband to marry because men don't want overly intelligent women. They don't want a woman to be more intelligent than the man. It's like the woman will get some, position in their marriage and the man is dumb or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you like, did you get those judgings or those questions when you were studying, especially doing your PhD? Because that's next
Mm-hmm.
level.
Yeah, well, where to start? Actually, like this whole idea of, oh, it's bad when women study because then they neglect their household task and the husband will get intimidated. I think it's, I would say, based on stereotypes. And I think it's also a bit problematic to expect a woman to be the one that solely needs to focus on the household. Like women can have ambition. They can do a lot of things and still make their family life work. And why is it that there's so much emphasis on or why is it that it's only the woman who is constantly questioned and who needs to fulfill all these expectations, and it's less often that the man will then also be asked similar questions. Oh, but why do you have all these aspirations? Like, how does it affect your family? Is usually the woman who gets these questions. Like, of course, I know, like the things you're saying, I also know that, you know, people may have these ideas or may raise these concerns, but personally, I haven't experienced this myself. So I
Your own
feel
is
quite
good.
privileged in that sense. Like my family, they are very supportive. They never ask me something like, oh, you know, now you're done with your PhD. Now is your time to think about family. Like, no, that's really not something that, you know, they don't put that type of pressure on me. They just really want me
Because
you know, to do what I like and to succeed in my own way.
growing up, I've I knew some ladies who were like going to school, like normal high school, whatever, and their parents were, solely like, go to school, no boyfriends, go to school, no friends, go to school, don't go out to do parties, to do this, focus on school, have zero social life. And then the moment they're like 23, then 24, 25, 26 going, then the parents are like, when are you bringing a husband to the house? Don't you think you have to, tone down this school thing, or tone down this career, following your dream, blah, 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 and go and look for husband, Because before we started this interview, I was really thinking about it. And I also, like, on social media, that people who are always constantly having discussions about these things and all that. And I went to read some couple of comments, and apparently there are lots of people who have had the same or the similar experience, that you're not allowed to do anything growing up. You have to focus on school, career, and then when you are getting there, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, but when is the man? Especially, it only happens with women, not men. The men, they can aspire and do whatever they want, but as for the woman, the moment you are clocking, they're like, isn't it time for you to tone it down? So I was wondering, maybe you two, you had similar, or you have one or two experience with that. That's why I asked you that question. But anyways,
Well,
your own is
I
good.
think
Your own is
you're
good.
like the only one who puts pressure on me when it comes to that. Literally.
Do I really put pressure on you? Hey, like, hey.
Well, you're the one asking me like, hey, Gladys, isn't that time, for you to
Hey,
consider?
really, Jackie? You see, I'm always
Literally.
condemning people who do that. You see, I'm learning myself. Hey, hey.
Yeah, and of course, I do agree that as a woman, that at a certain stage you may have to think about, okay, what is it that I want in life? Because maybe your biological clock is ticking, and after you reach a certain age, it may become more difficult to get children. But I think it's up to the women to decide when it's my time, and also don't feel like you have to fulfill all these things because other people are telling you that this is what you should aim for in life. I think it's up to you to decide, okay, this is what I want. And if it's something you want, then you may want to consider taking like concrete steps to get there. But yeah, I don't think that once you're 23, then you need to really start looking for your potential husband. If it's something you want, go for it. If you want to live if you want to be a married woman by that time, and even if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, so go for it. I don't think
Everybody
there's
in the
anything wrong with that.
family. Your
Yeah,
father is Ghanaian and your mom is Dutch. Did you get a
Ghanaian.
lot of
Yeah.
support from, because I assume because your mom's side is the Dutch side. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that they supported you a lot, they are okay with your decisions and all that. But did you get the same support from your father's side of the family?
Well, just to clarify, my mom is Dutch and Surinamese, and
Mm.
actually she identifies more strongly with her Surinamese side. So when I think about my upbringing, there are some Dutch influences, but also some influences from her Surinamese side. And yes, to answer your question, if I got the same type of support from my mom's side of the family as I did from my dad's side of the family. So you know, it's also good to mention that I didn't grow up with my dad's family, because my dad's family, most of them, they live in Ghana. My dad is one of the few of the family who actually moved to Europe. Yeah, now more and more family members are moving to Europe, but when I was growing up, I only knew my family and some of his friends. So I also didn't really feel like I grew up in a Ghanaian community, because I was also living with my mom. And already when I was around the age of 10, my dad moved to the UK. So I was mainly, with my mom. Yeah, my mom's family was always supportive. They always really encouraged me to follow my own passions. Even if I wanted to become a painter or like a music artist, they would be like, okay, just go for it. And more specifically, my mom, she was always the one who also really values creativity. I think it was more my dad who was saying like, okay, it's important to study, to get good grades, but also consider doing something like law or medicine. It wasn't really like anthropology. I was like, what are you going to study? What is
What is
anthropology?
that?
So yeah, yeah. So although he really encouraged me to aim high when it comes to education, he did, I think, have different aspirations for me. So I'm very happy that my mom was always telling me also, just do what you want to do. Otherwise, I may have, become a lawyer and not really be
and
happy.
like
Of
everybody want
course, you
a
never know
job.
how life goes. Yeah.
You can end up
You
there.
never
So
know
yeah,
how life
the
goes.
typical
Yeah.
become a doctor, banker, lawyer. Oh Lord. We've
Mm,
all had it.
yeah.
Growing up
Yeah.
for me, you, Gladys, like you are one of the typical example that I always used to get compared with. And I know it's not only me, most African children as well. You see, you see that Gladys. You have to be like her. You see the way she
Mm,
reads her book. Even if she's sitting in the bus, she's reading. Even if she's sleeping, she has a book on her forehead. Anything that she's doing, book, book, book. You have to aspire and be like her.
no,
Growing up,
but
I didn't
that's
like people like
actually,
you at all. Because
but
every
that's
time the comparison. Ajay.
no, but that's not how I was growing up. Of course, I was saying before that I really like my studies, but in high school and primary school, I wasn't like this typical nerd person who was like always reading and doing my homework on time. That's also how I was as a child. So even in school, when I had an examination or something, an exam, I would always do it very last minute. So I wasn't like the typical student who was super organized and really always getting good grades. I think it changed when I entered university, because I was finally doing what I really like to do. I really hated mathematics, for example, where you're forced to do it when you're in primary school, when you're in high school. But now when I was studying in university, I could actually really do what I wanted to do. That's when I really started to blossom as a student, I would say. Before that, I was just like, oh, okay, let me just do what I have to do.
But what were you
Oh,
when you were
yeah.
going to high school? What were you doing? Were you doing Hafel or FMBO or FAVO? What were you doing?
I was doing video, but
Even that one. Do you know the
um,
That is, I beg. Some of us
Yeah,
we were
but
doing FMBO, and the way we will get criticized. Hey, you're even doing not even half. We're doing favor. My friend.
yeah, so maybe like the story that I was just presenting, maybe you'd like, no, I don't believe
At
you
least you
if
were
you're
doing
saying.
compared to FMBO, you were higher. I
No,
beg.
but I think it's so bad that this comparison thing, and you know that people are made to feel like they are less, that they're
They're
not
not
as
even
smart
smart.
because they are
Yeah.
not, yeah, that they're not doing enough just because they are in a certain educational track. It doesn't say anything about your level of intelligence. So I think this whole comparison thing should also stop, because I really also agree that people who are in Thambio, for example, they're really stigmatized for also not being motivated enough, for example. But this is really based on stereotypes, I would say. Actually, when I was in groep 8, the final year of primary school, I'm not sure if the listeners know, but in the Netherlands, you have to do the CITO examination. And then based on your score, you are they will assign you to a certain educational track, right? And I was actually advised by the teachers to do VMBO HAVO, so much lower than the educational track that I ended up doing. But it was my mom who was like, no, I don't agree with this advice, this recommendation. I think Gladys should go to a much higher educational track. So she really pushed the teachers to send me to HAVO VWO. And eventually I was sent to HAVO VWO. And even when I was in high school, the teachers were still saying, like, oh, I don't think Gladys can do HAVO VWO. She should do VMBO HAVO. So I was always underestimated by the teachers, actually. It was literally my mom who believed in me from the start and who pushed me to aim higher. So if I wouldn't have had my mom's support, I think I would have also done VMBO, maybe HAVO.
You hear of this thing a lot often here in the Netherlands, for example, that, when children do the CITO-toets, CITO exam in groep 8, that they give them a lower grade than what they actually can, do. So, well, you're not the only one. So you're not the
Exactly.
only
Yeah. So
one.
I think it's important to share this, because people may think, oh, she has done this PhD. This means that her educational journey was so smooth,
Smooth.
but it wasn't like that. I really had to also, I experienced some struggles, people who underestimated me. And I was very lucky to have the type of support that I received, and also access to resources. So even when I felt like, okay, I cannot do this, I should stop, it was always like my mom was saying, okay, maybe we can ask someone to help you, to assist you with this particular course that you're struggling with, like with mathematics, for example. So I had these type of resources that also enabled me to cope with
Help
those
you with
challenges.
your yeah. But I remember when I was growing up in Togo as well, we had a homeschool teacher who come twice. I hated the experience, but
Exactly. I hated that too, but actually looking back, it's a privilege to have
very
access to this type
helpful,
of help.
literally. But as a Black woman, I'll say a Black woman with a PhD, what would you advise follow? Well, I don't want to stereotype this and be like, oh, it's only Black people, but I mean, if you're being honest, in where we are coming from, we don't really have these things often happening in our community, right? Like people really going forward, moving forward, gaining success. And, it's more in the outside, on the outside, and not really in our community. But so as a Black woman, getting your PhD, working hard all these years, and finally, getting the acknowledgement that you deserve, what would you advise other people growing up to also, want to become someone in the future?
That's a good question, because I also think it starts with the whole definition of success. How do you define success? Is it based on what you think success means, or are you defining it based on what you think other people around you think of what success means. And we spoke about this in this conversation. So oftentimes maybe you have parents telling you like, this is what you should do. You should become a lawyer, you should become a doctor. And that's based on that, you think, oh, this is what it means to be successful. This is what it means to become someone. So I think it's very important to think for yourself. Of course, I'm not saying like ignore what your parents are saying. They also have valid points. Like the reason why my dad was maybe putting so much emphasis on this was also because that's he wants me to succeed, to find a job. And once you choose certain study programs, it may be more likely that you'll be able to find a job than, for example, when you study anthropology, because it's also something that a lot of people are not familiar with. So I think it's important to also, if you want to do something that is maybe out of your comfort zone, but that you are very interested in, and there are no people around you that are doing something like that, just try to also take the initiative to find people maybe outside of your network who are doing this thing that you're interested in. So, for example, I didn't know what anthropology was, but I was just Googling and I found this study program in Amsterdam. I went there to the like an open day. I spoke to people who were studying anthropology. I didn't know any of them personally, and they actually inspired me to follow up on my desires. So yeah, try to reach out to people that can help you make a well-informed decision. And also, if that means that you have to go out of your comfort zone.
Saying anthropology,
yeah.
and what is anthropology?
Yeah. So, and when you do anthropology, you basically want to understand why people behave the way they. Wait. Let me rephrase. Why do people do what they do? To put it very simply. So it's not, as when you study psychology, you also try to understand, people's, what's going on through in people's minds. But when you study anthropology, you look more closely at their, for example, how they are shaped by the environment in which they live. Like oftentimes people think anthropology is about studying cultures. So, what cultural practices are going on in this culture, and then you try to see, okay, because of they grew up in this culture, that's why they behave in a certain way. That's oftentimes what people think about when they hear the word anthropology. But as anthropologists, you can apply what you learn in each situation, and even like if you want to, for example, study how people behave in a work setting. You go to a company and then you conduct interviews with people. You really observe what is happening there. And you say, okay, this company has a certain culture and this is what makes people act in a certain way, for example. And yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's basically
that's anthropology.
Yeah.
I'm saying, can someone like me also apply for a PhD, or do you need to have like a certain how do you call it, a certain degree before you can apply for PhD?
Yeah, well, usually you need to have a master's degree in order to apply. But of course, anyone can go for a PhD position if you first, of course, go and get your master's degree. And I actually think that is not everywhere that this is something that you need to do in order to apply for the PhD. I think in the United States, you can even apply for a PhD position with a bachelor's degree. So
like that.
Maybe that's more accessible in a way. I'm not sure.
But here in the Netherlands, definitely master first.
I believe so. Yeah, I don't know anyone who has applied for a PhD position without this qualification. And of course, they will also look at your CV. So do you like, what else do you need to have? Like some research experience is often desired. If you don't have it, then that's okay, because sometimes, when you are in school, you don't think about gaining research experience because you're only focusing on, your schoolwork. So, but they will check your grades the grades you got during your studies, and they will also ask for references. So teachers that know you, they will then write a letter to basically explain why they think you should be the PhD candidate.
Wow, so it's something very serious. It's not just something.
It's quite serious. Yeah, it's not like, oh, let me just apply. You really have to take your time. You have to write a cover letter. You have to prepare your CV. Sometimes you have to even send example of some of the work, like an essay that you've written. But don't let this be something that will stop you from applying, because I did it as well.
Because I wanted to ask you, did you face any challenges during the applying and also during the study itself?
Well, the application phase went pretty smoothly. I really know that it was something I wanted to do, so I was able to make this clear in my motivation letter. It was, I was very passionate about the topic, so that was reflected in my letter. And when I got invited to do the interview, that also I think it went quite well. Otherwise, of course, I wouldn't have gotten the position. So that went smoothly. It was just during the PhD position that I experienced some challenges. So, and I think it's also often seen as part of the PhD. That's why it's also like this celebratory moment. When I got the title, everyone was like, whoa, it's like such a huge moment, because it's like blood, sweat, and tears. Literally, it's the 4 years of your life that you dedicate to the research. So yeah, it's of course it's different for everyone, but to me, it wasn't an easy process, to say the least.
But Gladys, would you like to share any information if someone wants to know, how to apply for a PhD, or has question about studying here in the Netherlands or abroad and all that? How can they contact you so you can give them some tips and tricks?
Yeah, so I can give my email address or my Instagram. What is easier?
You can give both. I'll put it in the description box.
All right. Yeah. So it's gladys.akomUncobry@gmail.com. That's my email address. And my Instagram is glad.akom. That's it. Glad.akom. So if you have any questions about anything related to doing a PhD or applying for scholarships, or just, how to follow your aspirations, follow your desires, you can ask me.
You can ask her. She's always open and happy to help everybody. Even now, if I want to go to school, she's the one person that will go and ask questions, because she has gone to school. She knows the ins and outs. Anyways, let me talk too much for people to think that I've not gone to school. I don't really know anything. Anyways, thank you so much. That's all I have for you. Thank you. Bye.